Rich, how are you, my friend?
Excellent.
Man, it's good to see you.
It is.
I have had the pleasure, and I mean this sincerely, of spending a few days with you here on board the Cortez. Scott Bucher, we're a mutual friend, also Sean Hardigan,
Right.
told me what a great guy you were, and they put the bar too low. You are beyond that, man. It's really been nice.
It's nice of them to say.
No, it's been great, and you're such a gentleman. So nice to be around, and we've had really a great time here on board the Cortez. But I thought we'd take this opportunity. We got a little lull in the fishing
Unfortunately, yeah.
to know you a little bit better. So, first of all, how'd you get into fishing? In the very first, how old were you? Who got you into it?
Man, my dad got me going when I was really young. We started doing a lot of lake and stream fishing out in San Bernardino and out at the Colorado River. And then I would say like mid-grade school, we started going on sport boats. I know Dana Wharf used to do 2 for 1 Tuesdays, and that's how we got our feet wet. And then I was in middle of high school and got an opportunity to spend a summer on a sport boat down there. And did it for the last remainder of high school and had a job set up as soon as I graduated and never looked back.
What boat was that?
I started with a guy named Danny Shear. He had a boat called the Game Fish.
Mm-hmm.
And then I spent a few years with the Hansons and decided I wanted to see another side of it. And I spent 7 or 8 years with Mr. Doesberg on the Fury.
Oh, wow.
And then after that stint, I came down here to San Diego and spent a couple years with Aaron and Cole on the Shogun. And the year I had my first kid, I spent with Sean again up in Oceanside. We did a couple seasons on the Sea Trek up there with Helgrens, and then wasn't making it ends meet, so I came back to the long range scene and did that for a few years.
Back on the Shogun?
Back on the Shogun.
Yeah.
Transition of Russ to Aaron, Aaron to Russ, and then to Renee.
How do you like the long range scene? I know it's a little difficult maybe as a family guy, right?
Yeah.
To be away.
Honestly, I mean, I would still be doing it if I didn't have obligations to be home and be a husband and a father.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity. If the fish aren't biting where you're at, you can find where they're at and drive a day or two, and that's kind of acceptable.
Yeah.
You know, on a local trip, even a day and a half, your time is crunched, limited, and you're trying to make the best of it wherever you can. The long range scene definitely gives you a better option to not only catch one species of fish, but often multiple species of fish. And then you get to see a whole different side of things. We still fish half-day styles fishing, but we're doing it up and down the Baja Peninsula, be it yellowtail, barracuda, calico bass, the tuna, the dorado, a lot of the bottom fishes, the snappers, the groupers. So you really get to learn a good wide variety of fishing down there.
You've opened the door to a couple of things that I want to focus on. Number one is that time crunch, the pressure that you are under on these trips to find fish, and if you zig instead of zag sometimes, you're screwed. I mean, it's difficult.
Yeah, you know, honestly, all crew members feel that pressure along with the passengers. Nobody wants to be on a boat and not catch anything, but ultimately the heat and the eyes are all on the man upstairs. When you're not driving the boat, you don't really sweat it too bad. Yeah. You get to hang out and you meet some nice people.
Rambo's fault, right?
Unfortunately. But, you know, being on the other side of that, when you're that guy up there, you are sweating. The anxiety is real. Tensions are through the roof. You know, you're just trying to provide. And obviously there's definitely some competition factor amongst the other guys, you know, driving the other boats.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to get into with you, but the other thing you mentioned, being a husband and a father. Mm-hmm. It's tough in this business sometimes. I mean, you miss your family.
It takes a special woman to handle the household and children and such.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, the modern age with these new satellite setups, you know, we're able to FaceTime on a regular basis, and she's able to track my position, and she's seen us all the way down to Clipperton. She sees us out here at San Clemente, you know, so it's kind of cool. Like, I mean, we might not be face to face, but still having that daily relationship is absolutely huge, you know. And it's stepping aside from the long range scene, a day and a half to 3 day schedule is a lot more manageable on your home life. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's your chance to say hi to everybody there.
Hi at home. Nice to see everybody. Yeah.
So when you first started fishing, your dad introduced you to fishing. Do you remember it being something that you said to yourself, this is for me? Or
it was a disease. I remember I'd be 4 or 5 years old and we'd go camping out at the Colorado River, whether it was Meade, Mojave, Havasu. and he'd buy me a box of worms, and I'd sit there and catch bluegill all day. And eventually the worms run out, and they don't want to go back to the marina and get more. Well, you quickly figure out that these bluegill eat anything shiny, so a gold treble hook would suffice, and you can
Oh,
catch
wow.
them one after the other. You go through enough bluegill, eventually the bass start coming and trying to eat the bluegill. Hey, I need to upgrade my tackle and start fishing these things, and now my quarry's a lot bigger than just bluegill. It's just all kind of the tumble effect, snowballed out into something crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And then you go from that to being a pinhead, I'm sure. And did you
Yeah,
do that, or
no,
yeah, you
I mean,
obviously, right, or not, or did you go
the,
right
the
into?
trial one was pretty quick because I was
Oh,
able to fillet fish and I could tie some basic knots. And I mean, working on a skiff is one thing, but tying up a sport boat, there's a little bit of knowledge that comes with that.
yeah.
But they definitely gave me a fair opportunity my first summer down there. And if you work hard and keep your head down, it goes well for people.
Yeah, I've watched Donna operate down there at Dana
Oh,
West
they do a
Sportfishing, and
fantastic job.
she's like, a kid came in. I think he was just starting out, and he was not dressed all that nice. Which, when I was a deckhand, I didn't like. But she's like, "Excuse me, you need to put on a new shirt." She's very professional and runs a great operation.
They really do play that part well.
Yeah.
They've upscaled the half day, 3/4 day fishing. Their crews are very polite. They're very
Yes.
people friendly.
Yep,
And it
like
really
you.
helps. Yeah, it really helps. There's a lot of kids now running various boats down here in San Diego that all got their start there, and it shows. It shows.
How important is that nowadays? It's so different from the world I grew up in, Tyler. I mean, when I grew up, guys were like, they didn't even care about being courteous to people. It was brutal, man.
I often have a hard time being courteous to everybody. It's not easy.
You mean if you have a jerk on the boat or something?
Oh, sometimes
You're
I
not
can be
talking
the
about
jerk.
me again, are you?
But personalities just clash, and
Sure.
some people are better at navigating those scenarios than others. And those are the guys that, if this is really what you want to do, you figure it out.
You have to, right?
Have to.
Yeah,
Have to.
because you're always going to have that guy on the boat that drives you nuts, right?
It's part of it.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out some way to bridge that gap, and whether you make it light or find a common ground.
And part of that is, I think, like guys who fished their whole lives and have been on a trip where you're not catching fish. Let's say there's a trip like that. There's another bunch of guys that are like, why aren't you? And they don't understand that nobody on this boat wants to catch fish more than you.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, shoot. I mean, aside from having a good time, I mean, I like to see things die.
Yeah, right.
Why we're here. It doesn't matter day or night, if it's big or small. We do try to mix it up. If one thing's not biting, we'll fish rockfish. We fish the islands for the bass and bonita and stuff like that. Obviously, it's nice to get sea bass, yellowtail, halibut, but you got to kind of go full circle and fish a little bit of everything.
Yep, for sure. So on the Cortez, you're working with the legend, Rambo.
That's right.
How do you get that
That's
nickname? Do you know?
No idea.
Well, we're going to have to ask
idea.
him that later on.
You're going to have to ask him one on
How is it working for him? And nobody's listening. Rambo's not going to hear this. Just let it all hang out.
We crossed paths in the long range scene. He would come and he would drive the boat for some research and ecological trips. And I just really respected the way he ran a boat and a crew. He's phenomenal with crew and with passengers alike. And I went through some rough times, and he picked me up out of the dirt and put me back on my feet.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it gave you another chance
Gave me
when you were
another
going through
chance,
tough
that's
times. We all go through that. I went through my share of that too. And when you find somebody who gives you that chance, some people just write you off. And
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, unfortunately in this industry, there's a lot of people who get multiple chances and never really amount to anything. And he really put his neck on the line for me and helped me handle some pretty important life decisions.
that's great. That's
And,
great. He seems like that kind of guy.
He's done it for some other people in the past too, and they really turned themselves around and made something out of them. So,
I walked on the boat for this trip and I said, Jim, it has been a long time. And he said, yeah, 1996. I have no idea how he remembered that, but what a memory that guy had, man. It just blew me away.
He's chock full of stories.
Yep.
His memory's pretty sharp.
Yeah, for sure. You said he's good with crew. I imagine he impresses me. You tell me that he's a guy that wants things done right, wants people taken care of. I watch the way he loads bait at the receiver. He's not sitting on his butt, but
No,
he's
not
fair, right?
Not a micromanager by any means.
Great.
But let me tell you, you slack on your job or you're not living up to your expectations, he's going to let you know about it.
What do you mean he's good with the crew? He's fair, right?
He's fair. He does a lot of things on and off the boat to help us out, and he understands how hard it is to live this life. So he tries to make it comfortable here for you. If you work hard, he tends to reward you a little extra for it. Things like that. It makes the environment worthy of being here. It gives a person the drive to want to be here, and it usually brings out the better side of people.
Yeah, yeah.
And usually, if you get somebody that's not really living up to that expectation, kind of forces them out.
Yeah. A lot of guys are not cut out for this, right? I mean, you talk about he understands how hard it is to be in this game. It is freaking difficult. Not only is it hard work, not only is there sleep deprivation, not only do you miss your family, it's all of that and more. It's a difficult lifestyle, and some guys are just not cut out to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all personal preference. What you really want to do with it. It's the bluefin fishing. Yeah, is a lot more nighttime fishing, especially in the last few years. But years past, when we'd fish the islands, you're making squid throughout the night. You're dropper looping throughout the night. It really isn't that different. People have just kind of been geared to tuna fishing, offshore fishing, as sun up to sundown. Look for kelps, look for breezers,
and then get some sleep,
things like that, and then have a nice night, dinner, drink some beers, and it's kind of evolved to a heavy nighttime deal where oftentimes we sleep during the day because the fish don't bite and aren't around, and then at night they're there, and that's your opportunity.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this?
Shoot,
how long have you had your license, and how long have you been doing this?
Well, I started fishing in 2002 at Dana Wharf.
Yeah.
And I got my license, I want to say 2012. And then I let it expire for a few years and got it back about 3.5 years ago.
Yeah. So, good for you, man. Sounds like you're back and ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, try it.
Tell me fishing, something about fishing, the actual sport fishing that you've learned from Jim Hughes that's important to you, whether it's dealing with passengers, finding fish.
Well, especially like in today's particular trip, the fish are MIA and everybody's really branching out. Whether there's been fish biting in summer or spring, the person who tries, it's high risk, high reward. Everyone's aware of that, but don't be afraid to trust your instinct and go and try. And if you fail, at least you didn't sucker into anybody else's BS or do against what you would have traditionally done. So you be confident, make a decision, and if it's good, it's good. If it's not, oh well, tomorrow's another day.
That's right. That's right. How about an important life lesson that you've learned from him, whether it's work ethic or giving somebody a second chance or what?
Everybody deserves a second chance.
Yeah, I'd be nowhere without. I need, I could use like a third and fourth one once in a while.
Once in a while. Well, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but
Let's get into a little bit of tackle stuff because since so many guys out there are going to be fishing bluefin tuna at night, talk about how the importance of having the right tackle, number one. How important is it to be, just your knots are right, you've got the right tackle. We've got fishing expert Brian Wynn on this trip, and he's my go-to guy.
Aficionado.
Yeah, absolutely.
The nighttime jigging game's really evolved, especially in the last few years, where we were using these rail rods and, international 30 wide reels and stuff, and now they've got these smaller reels that have quite the drag capability. They're able to pack a lot of line on. They're able to fish it on a lighter rod that's very durable, gives you a lot more maneuverability with the jig as far as getting in the water and up and down. The jigs, depending on the weight, are pretty difficult to wind up and down all night long.
Yeah.
And the new equipment's really making it a lot more accommodating to the angler. I do like using the rail rod, but those short rods do have their time and their place, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting catching those bigger fish on them. I don't think that style of fishing is for every angler, but there's definitely a niche for it, that's for sure.
What's the trick to it, or what's the deal? You say it's not for everybody.
It's a shorter rod. It's a lot harder to use the rail because the rod doesn't keep the line away from the boat. As far as utilizing the boat and the rail to your advantage when you're fighting a larger fish, it pretty much takes that out of the equation. It's all upper body strength, leaning over, keeping the line away from the propeller or the rudder or in the corner. It's all a person's strength and determination as opposed to utilizing the rod and the reel and fighting the fish that way. It's certainly a lot easier with the rail rod.
Yeah. Some of the basics that are super important, at least I think, but you're the pro here, not me. I'm sitting in a podcast studio all the time. You're out here on the water actually doing this, but dropping when the captain tells you to drop, so you've got to be Johnny on the spot.
The idea behind that is the school is moving, we're moving, and as we're getting the boat directly over the top of the fish. When you're dropping, your jig is coming through the school that we're running over and trying to stop the boat on. And by dropping down quickly, typically if you can elicit a bite quite in that first 30 seconds, it tends to spur the other fish to bite. So if you got guys that are in the bunk room or half asleep in the galley, obviously those first couple guys out might get a bite, but if not everybody comes out, you really do miss an opportunity, because it's like, oh, they see 1 or 2 baits, you hook those fish, and the rest of the fish continue on. If you hook half a dozen or 10 of those fish, now that school is aware of something going on, and they really tend to respond to the boat. And you can see it on the machine at night, whether it's on the sonar or the up and down.
Oh,
you
interesting.
see the school respond. It's pretty amazing.
You hang a fish, and then the fish, or hang several fish, and they'll stay with you.
Yeah.
And that's where you get your
a lot
prolonged
of times-
bites?
Right. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
That is really, really interesting. Now, dropping to the exact depth, do you like the colored metered line? Is that important?
The colored line, I guess, if you're really aware of your color scheme, I'm sure it's fine. We tend to just mark the line.
Yeah.
Depending on what boat you're on, we'll wrap the line or the jig in the corner and go to the cat head and back, and you just leave it attached. And, depending on the length of the boat, be it a 50-foot boat, 60-foot boat, or 90-foot boat, you just put marks right there. And now okay, I'm at roughly 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet. And it's critical because a lot of people either don't drop deep enough, or they drop beyond the fish and they're fishing the jig below the school. So
what do you mark the jig? What do you mark the line with?
Just a Sharpie.
Okay.
It leaves enough residue on the string that it usually lasts for a while. Most of the people now, at first everybody kind of had the idea, oh, I want this dark colored spectra, so it's hard for the fish to see, and the fish don't see it. So having white or bright colored spectra is far easier to see, and you see those marks come through the guides. If you're really good at paying attention to the colors, I know some of their colors tend to be 30 or 40 feet. I think some are more like 100 feet. It's a little easier to work with less colors, if you ask me, but personal preference.
Yeah. How do you factor in scope? Like if your line is scoped out, how do you factor that in to get to the right depth?
If the boat has been drifting, I will not fish with much scope in the line. I want that jig as vertical as possible.
Yes.
On the initial drop, I will let that go further because I'm assuming that there is some scope and that jig is not yet where it needs to be. But once the boat has settled in, I will either drop straight up and down depending on the current conditions. If the boat's drifting fast, if there's wind, I really like to cast my jig down swell as far as I can, and I fish it to the boat. Oftentimes the fish, especially bluefin, like to ride down swell of you, and by casting that way, you get bit on the sink, and the jig tends to fall a little bit freer. It doesn't have as much tension on the reel. I think you get more action out of it. And then if you do get thumped and the fish misses, you can throw the reel in gear and kind of hop it, or do a couple quick turns, throw it back in free spool, and that sudden movement often elicits a strike.
Excellent stuff. So when your jig stops, you're dropping. You haven't hit bottom, right?
You haven't hit bottom. Always suspect that it's a bite. Put the reel in gear and turn the handle.
Yeah, for sure.
Swings are free. Bites are hard to come by sometimes.
That's for sure. How about the 2024 season? Let's just talk about it in general. I heard Rambo saying we haven't seen water this cold for 8-9 years. So we're in a colder water year. It's weird though, because I don't know that people are trying to explain this season like kind of stop and go so far this season. I mean, I remember Tanner Bank in the water in the high 50s in December, and we were still catching bluefin full speed. So don't know.
I think
it's a weird year, right?
I think it's too early to tell. I know
I
a lot
agree.
of the guys that have seen multiple seasons, a few more than I have a lot of speculation on stuff, but seems like this bluefin has remained in California waters and above throughout the winter. There wasn't as much that trickled back down this fall. There's fish here, but it doesn't seem like the volume that was here last year.
Correct.
Aliar on the Supreme and a few of the other guys, they got rolling in late March and caught fish right out of the gate, and all the way up into May. They were having very, very successful nighttime fishing. The daytime fishing was a struggle, but they were really having good success at night. This year, there's been mostly nighttime fish, a little bit of daytime fish, but very inconsistent. Huge gaps of no fish.
Yes. Albacore, man. Albacore.
One can only hope.
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah, for all the driving around, guys haven't really seen fish on kelps yet. A few yellowtail, but nothing to write home about. The water is 61.5 to 63.5, which is not, abnormally cold, but it's not abnormally warm either.
Yes. So. Finally, what would you say to the really novice angler, maybe the 3/4 day guy or the overnight guy who wants to make the jump and come out and catch a big bluefin, but he says to himself or herself, I don't know if I'm ready for that. What do you say to them? Are they ready for it? With a good crew, can they do it?
Most any boat is determined to make you catch a fish, be it big or small. If you're fortunate enough to hook a big one, or if they get a kite rotation going, they're going to hold your hand and walk you through it. Anybody that's ever said, "Oh, I'm not ready for that," they are. It's just a matter of getting coached through it. And
So listen to the crew,
listen
right?
to the crew. They'll help you out.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for.
I've been doing this for 50-something years, and I listen to the crew every single time I come on here. It's so important.
It's important, and oftentimes what you heard via the newspaper or Instagram or Facebook a few days prior or a week prior is not what's currently going on. The guys that are there day in and day out, they're seeing the change and the subtleties, and paying attention to that stuff often will give you your opportunity.
Yeah. Tyler, it has been an absolute pleasure, not only fishing with you, but to get to know you a little bit better. I know going forward, you and I are going to be communicating more often, and we'll see each other around. Thank you so much for your kindness and hospitality on this trip.
Thanks for coming out.
I'll see you again soon.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
Thank you.